Hi, I'm Molly, and through the course of this class, I've come to believe that there are certain things that make a life more meaningful. The four things I think are the most important aspects of a meaningful life are happiness, love, vulnerability, and self-actualization. Together, these components of life allow us to become better individuals and make the world a better place to be. Without all of these things, our lives would be shallow and we would never experience any mental or spiritual growth. The first component of human life that I think is necessary for living a meaningful life is creating happiness. Happiness is so important in a life because it can come in so many forms and has the ability to inspire people to live in ways that allows happiness to be spread from person to person. While I don't think a person would necessarily have to have experienced personal happiness in their life to make it meaningful, it is important that the choices in your life have created happiness in the people around you. In other words, if the actions that a person takes in his or her life create more happiness in the world around them than they do sadness, then I would consider that person's life meaningful, even if they were never able to find any personal happiness for themselves. Some people may object to the idea that happiness is a necessary part of life by saying that it's possible for someone to commit their lives to bettering the situations of others or of the environment, but never experiencing a sense of happiness, and they would have lived a very meaningful life. I would agree that they had lived a meaningful life, and I would argue that this objection is wrong because while those people may have lacked the ability to experience happiness for themselves, their contributions to the world around them and to making the lives of others better would have created happiness for those people. To me, happiness is not something to be found in life, but is rather something to be created and shared. In my own life, happiness looks like spending time with my family and loved ones and taking care of the 5 rescue dogs that live with my family. The next component that I believe is a crucial component to living a meaningful life is the love and relationships we share with others. Having love and relationships in your life is important because it adds happiness to your life and the life of whom you love, and also builds bonds between us that are stronger and more significant than they would be if there was no love. The types of love that one has in their life is also an important factor in deciding if that life was meaningful or not. While it is okay to love your possessions, it is far more important that you love other living things such as romantic partners, family, and friends. Some people would argue that love is not a requirement to having a meaningful life because it's possible that there could be someone who could devote their lives to protecting animals or the environment from destruction, but who lives their entire life in solitude, never knowing others, and that those people could still have lived meaningful lives. To this point, I would argue that those people did have loves in their lives, it was just not the same type of love that most people have. Although they did not have relationships with other people, which perhaps could have made their lives even more meaningful, their lives would clearly demonstrate that they loved the natural world and took care of it the same way that one would care for a loved one. For example, in my own life, my family and I take care of 5 rescue dogs. Although they are not people and I don't have the same kind of relationship with them that I would have with people, I think that the love I have for my dogs makes my life more meaningful because it teaches me compassion and how to care for others. The third component that I think is necessary to have in your life in order to having a meaningful life is vulnerability. The concept of vulnerability is often misinterpreted as weakness, and in order to be able to allow yourself to acknowledge the vulnerability in your life, you need to be able to let go of the notion that vulnerability is the same as weakness. I believe that even though vulnerability causes temporary discomfort, in the end it allows people to grow more trusting of others in their lives and make attachments to others more meaningful. Others might argue that vulnerability isn't something we should have in our lives, and maybe is even something that we should avoid in order to have a more meaningful life. These people would argue that if people had enough success in their lives and enough happiness and love, then they would not even need to feel vulnerable, and when they do is because of a failure in their life. To these people, I would say that vulnerability is not only important to a meaningful life, but is absolutely necessary. That vulnerability and the failure it often stems from force people to acknowledge their flaws and realize that no matter how hard they try, they will make mistakes, but that they will be okay, and people will more often than not help them. Vulnerability forces people to stop seeing themselves as their own little island and see themselves as part of the whole. Allowing myself to feel vulnerable has been one of the biggest struggles in my life. Because independence was so ingrained in me as a child, I've always had difficulties opening up to others and letting them see my faults. But I know that in the end, learning to be more open will give me a better and more meaningful life. The fourth and final component of a meaningful life that I'm going to talk about here is self-actualization. Finding self-actualization is different from finding happiness or love or success because it's not something that you can find through other people or other things. It is something that you have to find within yourself and without the help of others. If someone lacks the motivation to find what their passions and talents are and do what it takes to make them a reality, then they will never reach self-actualization and their life will have been much less meaningful because of it. Some people believe that self-actualization isn't important. All that is important is doing what you want, and it doesn't matter if you ever get good at it. I would disagree with these people and say that if you have a natural talent for something but choose not to develop it and instead focus on something else, then your life is much less meaningful because of your wasted potential. To me personally, my art is very important because it's something I'm good at and something that I have a passion for. If I was not able to do art, I think my life would be less meaningful because I would not be able to actualize my talent or even try. Self-actualization, along with happiness, love, and vulnerability, are the 4 components to life which I believe are the most necessary for a meaningful life. The reasons I have just outlined for why these 4 components are so important show that these 4 attributes are interconnected. Just as love in our lives brings happiness and self-actualization often comes with a fair amount of vulnerability, all 4 of these components act upon each other and allow people to have deeper relationships with one another and more meaningful lives.